Okay. Hey everybody. Welcome to our third virtual shadowing session. I mean, fourth, sorry. Our fourth virtual shadowing session. Today we have with us Miss Charlie Abiezzi, and she's a medical student who's put together a very insightful presentation for us on her experiences in the pre-med journey. Just a reminder for everybody that if they have any questions at all during the presentation, they can always put it in the chat and we can go over it at the end of the presentation. Please keep your cameras off and yourselves muted. And also remember that there will be a quiz posted in our Instagram bio after the session, which you need to get a 75 or higher on to get credit. That's about it. You can start whenever you're ready, Miss Abiezzi.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I feel really honored and privileged to be talking to high schoolers. I feel like high school was just yesterday for me, but also so much has happened since then. I was definitely really interested in medical school and I wanted to become a doctor in high school. And so for those of you who are out there who are thinking about becoming a doctor and have no idea on how to start or what activities to get involved in or kind of what the roadmap looks like to get from high school to medical school, I'm here to kind of serve as your guide today. And I'm going to share with you my journey as a pre-med and how I got to medical school. Fortunately, there won't be any cases today because I haven't personally experienced a lot of cases as a pre-med just yet, or as a med student just yet, but hopefully this information can be helpful to you if you're thinking about going to medical school after college. So first things first, I think the way that traditional applications go is you start college, you have a general interest, and you start pursuing activities that are in line with those interests. And by the end of it, you're set. You're going to apply to medical school. You have these activities in your back pocket. You've taken your classes, you've taken your MCATs, and you're going to apply. And now you have to apply and write your personal statement. That is always a big challenge for a lot of pre-meds because they never had that idea of why they're doing this in the first place from the get-go. Now, I know that it's not so set in stone for everyone, but I'm here to say that the sooner you identify your why factor, why do you want to go to medical school, the better your application is going to be and the more seamless your undergraduate experience is going to be. So I'll give you an example. So for my own self, in high school, I knew from a young age that I was very passionate about children. And as you can see here, I would actively pursue a lot of opportunities where I could work with kids. And this started from an extremely young age, starting from essentially raising my 3 younger siblings. So I have 3 younger siblings who are quite younger than me. They're around 9 years younger than me. So I felt like I was essentially their mom growing up. I was always taking care of them. And I always had that passion for helping and educating my little siblings. And then soon in high school, that kind of translated to me working with kids in a children's hospital. And so I volunteered at a children's hospital. I used to babysit a lot, used to nanny a lot. These are just things that you can do in high school to get your feet wet. I know that there aren't as many activities and opportunities available, especially with shadowing. And I know that that's why a lot of high schoolers are trying to seek out these virtual shadowing opportunities, which are now becoming a lot more accessible relative to going in person in the clinic. So I really encourage you to really think hard and why you're attracted to medicine. What about it excites you? Are you intrigued about the problem solving side? Do you really want to play an integral role in working in a team? Do you like working in a team setting? Do you like being a support system for people during their vulnerability? There's an array of reasons. There are an array of causes that can inspire you. And this why factor that I really want you to latch onto is going to be the guiding map that's going to help you take on and pick wisely which activities you decide to do in college to get to where you need to be. And then that brings me to my second point. You need to think reasonably about your timeline. undergrad is traditionally 4 years, and a lot of people do take gap years. Me being one of them, I did take 1 gap year. But even with a gap year, I still had to be really, really intentional about how I spent my time every single summer, every single winter break, every single year in school to make sure that I got all these activities in. And the sooner you identify your why, the sooner you realize that you want to enter medicine, whether it's medical school or any medical profession, the more seamless this is going to be for you in terms of picking summers to do big exams like the MCAT, in terms of when to do shadowing experiences, starting volunteer opportunities that are in line with your purpose, in line with what excites you. So that way, when you get to your application four or so years later, you already have your story, and your story is crafted perfectly, and you have all these experiences that can back up what you're saying in terms of why you want to go to medical school. You're not only saying it to them, you have all these experiences that can back you up. And that is what I really, really try to vouch for students like you who are just getting started and are just thinking about their process. And you should definitely have that in the back of your mind as you begin undergrad. Okay. So for people who don't know, there's a set of classes you have to take to get into medical school. So you could major in anything. I know people who were dance majors and they were pre-med. So you can do whatever your heart desires in terms of a major. I personally did biology and psychology, which was amazing. I loved it. But no matter what major you pick, you have to have these courses. So you need to have your general biology with lab for a year, chemistry, physics, organic chemistry. You're going to have calculus or statistics. Depends on the school and what the school offers. You have to take English for a year, and that I didn't know because I took AP English. I'm sure a lot of you are in AP English as high schoolers, but unfortunately, the AP exam doesn't let you off the hook for medical school. You still have to take English in undergrad. And so that is definitely something to keep in mind. And you also have to take biochemistry for 1 semester. Other fun classes that are recommended that you could take are like psychology, sociology. I would personally highly recommend anatomy, because I'm currently taking anatomy in medical school, and it's extremely overwhelming, especially in addition to my classes. If you have some sort of a foundational knowledge or just some knowledge about anatomy, I think it'll help make your med school process a lot more smooth. But that's just my own personal opinion. But these are the classes to think about when deciding, okay, I'm going to go to medical school and I'm going to get it done. So numbers are also really important. A lot of people, they slack off their first year. They're like, oh, I'm just getting started. I'm just testing the waters. And, that's completely normal. That's completely fine. But you have to keep it in the back of your head that in order to be competitive for medical school, you do need to have a somewhat competitive GPA and an MCAT score. So if you're thinking of an MD, a traditional MD allopathic medical school, you're looking at a GPA at around 3.7 with a science GPA of 3.64. And I'll get to what a science GPA is just a second. And then for DO or osteopathic medical schools, you're looking at a GPA of around 3.6 and a science GPA of 3.4. So really not that big of a difference between the two types of medical schools that you could go to. Still both very competitive, and you obviously need to do well in school. So for science GPA, AMC posted this box right here of what is considered a science class that is a part of your science GPA. So it could be any of these. It could be anatomy, biology, cell biology, zoology, any of those classes. And they could be classes that you take at a community college. So I actually know a lot of people who do their undergrad experience and then they take all their pre-med courses at a community college because they want their science GPA to be extremely high. And I know you have to be strategic. If you have If you have no time in undergrad to take those generally harder classes during the school year, then you might want to set aside a summer or maybe after you graduate to get those classes done. Big question that a lot of people ask me, because I go to an osteopathic medical school, is what's the difference between MD and DO, and what even is a DO? I know that I didn't know what a DO was until I was a junior in college, which is kind of crazy because they're all around us. But okay, so there are two routes that you could take to becoming a doctor in the United States. One of them is MD, and one of them is DO. So DO is an up and coming field, and it is really centered on holistic healthcare. And I think a lot of people are gravitated to this field, especially people who are interested in primary care. So for me personally, I really want to work with children. I want to be a first level provider. I do want to do pediatrics or something similar like family medicine, where I'm working with a child population. And so I was really attracted to osteopathic medical school, where we incorporate not only all the basic sciences that a traditional MD allopathic school will have, but we also have nutrition integrated into our curriculum. We have exercise management integrated into our curriculum. We also have this really interesting thing called OPP, or osteopathic practices and principles, where they teach you manipulations on how to treat the body, treat and diagnose the body without giving the person medication. Now, we learn about all the normal medications, but it's a cool tool that you could have in your back pocket if none of the medications are working. Let's say you have a patient that's coming in with chronic back pain, and this patient has tried all the pain medications in the world and nothing is helping him or her. You could try OPP and you can help that patient using your hands. And they teach you how to do this in osteopathic medical school. Now, something that actually just happened in 2020, which is pretty exciting, is now all MD and DO graduates will be going to the same residency. So our training will be exactly the same. There will be no difference in terms of residency. I will be training alongside my MD colleagues. However, our medical school experience is a little different, whereas, like I said, ours is a little more focused on holistic healthcare, whereas I think at MD schools, from what I've heard from my friends who attend those schools, is that it's very research heavy. It's very focused on the basic sciences. They really encourage students at MD schools to specialize. So they're big research institutions where you have more of those opportunities. So you need to assess what you want and what you want for yourself. And based on that, these are the numbers that you have to work towards. So MCAT, the MCAT is definitely well away for you if you're thinking about medical school. I think the biggest thing that you need to get out of this slide is that the MCAT it's multifaceted. It's 2 phases. You need to review a bunch of content. So I would recommend you take all your pre-med classes. And then after you take a bulk majority of them, I would then take the MCAT maybe the year after junior year, or maybe even your sophomore year if you're trying to apply right away without a gap year. The biggest thing that I want you to get out of this is practice problems all the time and do them timed. I think the biggest thing that I definitely didn't do well on the first time I took the MCAT was I focused so much of my attention on trying to memorize these textbooks. There's these giant textbooks that have all the information that you need to know for the MCAT. And unfortunately, this is not a test about memorization. This is a test about strategy, critical thinking. They give you a case and you need to answer questions in regards to the case. So really 50% of the material you need to know is given to you right there in front of your face in the case. So you need to know some knowledge, but it should supplement the case that you're reading, and it will enhance your understanding of what is happening in the passage. And that is what will lead to your success in answering those practice problems. So what I would recommend is really, really, really focus on reviewing the chapter that you're going on that day, and then dedicate a majority of your day doing practice problems. Review those practice problems, review your timed exams, and identify your weak spots. And that's going to be the key to your success with MCAT. Another big misconception is that I know when I was thinking about the MCAT in undergrad, everyone was like, oh, are you taking a course? What course are you taking? And it was just like a expectation that you should take a course to succeed. And I have to tell you that really this is fake news. You do not need a course to succeed in the MCAT at all. If you are disciplined, if you are diligent, and you can make a study schedule for yourself, and you have your calendar, you lay out what day you're going to do what chapters, you have practice problems that you set aside for yourself to do every day, and you're reviewing them, that is going to be more than enough than taking a course, which is essentially just going to review the textbooks for you. That's what the course is. You go and they review a chapter together, and then you take some notes, and then you go home, and that's what the course is. So it's not necessary. And I know this from personal experience because I took a course. Okay, components to have on your application. So I have to begin by saying there really isn't any cookie cutter way to get into med school. This is just a general guide. If you're in high school and you're like, okay, I'm about to start undergrad, I have no idea how to start. What do I get involved in? Help. This is essentially what this is going to tell you. And this is what I did. This is basically what I did with my journey. And I have all the organizations here to the right of what I was personally involved in before applying to medical school. So you want to have volunteer work, and that's a given. And you can even start this process in high school and continue it on. I think the biggest thing with volunteer work in any of these activities that you're doing is you want to have, I would say maybe one or two, maybe two, I'm going to say two to be safe, of persistent activities that you do over a long period of time. And that's really important because when you're applying to medical school, admission committees like to see dedication to something that you're passionate about. So when you're picking whatever volunteer activity that you're doing, make sure that it's in line with your why. Make sure it's in line with what excites you and what drives you on this journey. Don't just pick an activity to check a box, because they're going to see that. They're going to see it when you're describing it, when you're talking to them during your interview. You want to be passionate about every single thing that you do during undergrad if you can, and that's going to make you shine when you're discussing your story at the interview stage. So some examples of what I did for volunteer work. So I kind of split it up into two parts. There's clinical volunteer work that you can do. So I did a mission trip. I went to Peru for 2 weeks, and I helped educate the natives there in Pamplona Alta, and we helped build staircases for them. They didn't have running water, and they lived on these slump hills. So I definitely enjoyed that experience. It was really powerful. I also worked at a free clinic. I think everyone should pursue working at a free clinic. And honestly, if you're in high school and you're trying to get shadowing experience, this is where you should really, really reach out to and try to get experiences at, because typically free clinics, they don't have the red tape that big hospitals do. Typically with bigger hospitals like UCSF Benioff, which is another place I volunteered at, I had to have these base volunteer hours of like working in a gift shop or the front desk that like nobody wants to do, but you have to do it for like 50 hours before you could get in and work with patients. And also, I noticed for bigger hospitals to get involved in volunteering, you need letters of recommendation, and there's just more red tape. It's harder to do. Whereas at a free clinic, they are eager and excited to have you on board. These are smaller free clinic areas that the doctors are volunteering their time. Everyone there is hands on deck, all hands on deck. I know I volunteered there, and I was essentially like a nurse. I was taking vitals. I was taking a history. I was actually helping with vaccines at one point. And that wouldn't have happened had I been at a big hospital. So really try to take advantage of that and look out for those free clinic experiences and try to get involved, because it's going to give you really high yield clinical experience and with these intimate patient encounters that you don't traditionally see at a big hospital. So aside from getting clinical experience, clinical experience is working with patients, helping a underserved patient population. That all falls under clinical. And non-clinical volunteer work is just as important, and somewhere where you can just kind of branch off and go away from medicine for a little bit and do something that you love, something completely unrelated to medical school. And you could teach, you could be a camp counselor, you could work at a food bank, homeless shelter, whatever speaks to you. So for me, like I said, I love kids. I worked as a camp counselor, and I taught English to children in Italy. So I got to live in Italy for an entire month, one summer. It was absolutely amazing. I also worked with kids during the SAGE mentorship program. So I talked to them, and I was like their after school buddy. I would play sports and activities with them. I would kind of listen to them, because these are kids who are struggling due to either like social factors happening in their family or academically, whatever it may be. The reason was not disclosed to the mentors, but we just knew that we needed to be there for that child and be a supportive presence. And I had so much fun being a SAGE mentor. Another thing that is really important, and you could seek this out in any way. It doesn't have to be like being president of a certain club. Leadership can present itself in many ways. So you can be a manager at your job if you need to make money during your pre-med years and you work your way up to a managerial position. That's leadership. You could be a teacher's assistant. You can, for me, I was very active in my sorority. So I was the scholarship director at my sorority, and I was in charge of really helping my sorority women do well academically. So I would sit with the girls who were struggling, and I would help give them a game plan. I would monitor their grades. I would send them to different resources, or direct them to different resources that they could take advantage of, like tutoring services, counselors, all the above. And that was the role that I played. And it was a great leadership experience. Why is this important? If you're trying to become a doctor, what is a doctor? The doctor is the leader of the team, and they want to make sure that you have the personality, you have the ability to make hard decisions, to guide people, to be a role model to others. Because as a doctor, although it is a team, and although it is a team effort in the medical field, the doctor is the leader and the one taking charge of what the patient's protocol is going to be. How are we going to treat this patient? And you need to have the experience in order to show admission committee that you're going to be one of the best leaders out there. Okay, so shadowing. So I guess that's why all of you are here. Shadowing, of course, is extremely important. However, there's a big however. I don't think it's the end all be all to your application. It's very important to understand what you're getting yourself into. It's really important to know that, oh, this is what a life of a doctor looks like. I could see myself doing that. That is so, so key. But when you're shadowing, what are you doing? I would say 9 times out of 10, you're standing there and you're watching the doctor. You're not showcasing yourself in the way that admission committees want to see. You're not able to demonstrate all the amazing characteristics that you have because you're observing the physician. And that is completely understandable. You don't want to be, you want to be respectful of their time. They're letting you see patients. They're giving you insight to their life. Super, super applicable and super important. But what I would say is I would maybe dedicate one summer And I would go once or twice a week, full time, like all day, try to really get to know that physician between patient cases, ask questions, show that you're interested, be mindful, and really try to shine in any way that you can. Because what is important for medical school is you do need a letter of recommendation from a physician that you did shadow. I'm not sure about allopathic medical schools, but I know for osteopathic medical schools, you do need one from an MD or DO, and DO is obviously preferred. So definitely keep that in mind, that this is something you do need to do, but I wouldn't say that you should dedicate hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours shadowing like you should with volunteer work or you should with research. But it is still nonetheless very important to have on your application. But I would dedicate maybe a small portion of your timeline to shadowing. So research is always a big one I get asked about, because I know a lot of people go to undergraduate institutions where research just like it's not a thing. There aren't really opportunities on that campus for research. They have to actively seek those opportunities in the local area. And this could be at hospitals, they could be at research institutions, whatever it may be. But even that, it could be hard for students going to smaller schools. So I'm going to say that research is also not necessary to get into medical school, but it's extremely important. And I'm sorry, it's a great way to showcase your talents. I guess that's a better way of putting it. If you have the opportunity to get involved in research, you should do it. And I did a lot of research in undergrad. I worked in 3 undergraduate institutions because I went to a really big research school. So I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad, and everywhere you look, there's another flyer to get involved in research. So it really depends on where you are. But for me, I thought research was an incredible way to demonstrate my critical thinking skills, to really problem solve and develop my own experiment. So I ended up creating my own project. I put out a poster. I was really proud of it. I ended up getting published. It was a really amazing experience to really grow as a person. I also had the opportunity to really rise amongst my research assistants. And by the end of my 2 years there, I was the one, like I was saying, leading the experiments. I was the one teaching protocol to other people we were taking on. I had a lot more responsibility, and that showed. And when it came to letters of recommendation and my research coordinators were coming to write me a letter, they had so much that they could speak to on my behalf. So I think it's really, really important, whether it's research, whether it's volunteer work, whether it's your job, have that one experience where you are really able to grow, where you are really able to thrive and showcase all you have to give, because you want that bragging letter from a coordinator, a manager, a boss, anyone. They're going to see it. They're going to see you flourish, and they're going to be able to write on your behalf. And that's what's going to help you shine in medical school when you're standing amongst all these other applicants who have the volunteer work and the research and the shadowing and the grades. What's going to help you stand out? It's that letter. It's that letter of the person who's bragging about you, showcasing why you are the best, why they would be crazy if they didn't pick you. So make sure you set yourself up for success, that you have that one experience in your pre-med journey. And for those of you who have no idea how to get involved in research and want to know, I do have a step-by-step process on my website, Checkups with Charlie, if you're interested in that. Okay, and I guess the last thing is something not related to medicine. And I did kind of allude to this when I was talking about the volunteer work that's not clinically oriented. But I think it's really important to have something that makes you stand out. When they see your application, how are they going to leave and remember you? You want to have a signature. And this could be something completely unrelated to medicine, and it should be. And time and time again, when I talk to my friends who've gone through their medical school interviews, I'm like, oh, what did they ask you about? Like, this is the question that I ask them. And they always tell me that the admissions reps clinged on to that one thing that was really different, that was special, that was not even related to medicine at all. And so I'll give you an example for me. So I did a beauty pageant last year, or I guess 2 years ago now. Yeah, 2 years ago. And that already is a pretty unique experience. Not a lot of people have the chance to participate in a beauty pageant, but I think what made it even more special, and what was brought up in my medical school interviews time and time again, was what I did with it. So I made sure to create a platform for myself to raise money and to raise awareness for Lebanon. And for those of you who know what Lebanon is, it's a country in the Middle East. I'm 100% Lebanese, and they're currently experiencing a lot of turmoil, especially economic turmoil after the COVID-19 crisis. It's not been good for them at all. So I made it a point to vouch for Lebanon, to raise awareness, and we were able to raise $10,000 for Lebanon. And I donated that money to the orphans in Lebanon. This is a picture of me with the orphans in Zahle, and this is a city where my dad was from in Lebanon. This is me with one of the governors of Zahle. So I was working hand in hand with the politicians, with the people in Lebanon, and I was raising money. I was helping their voice be heard, and I think that was really noticed on my application, even though it had nothing to do with medicine. So they want to see that passion. They want to see that thing that's different about you. And I think that's what's going to really help you stand out, in addition to, all the other things like the grades and the scores and research and shadowing, all the above. You want to have that one thing that just like makes you different. So when they see your application, they're like, oh, wow, he ran a marathon and raised this amount of money for the marathon. Or, oh my goodness, he teaches guitar to little kids, or he does this, he plays at these big music concerts, something completely different. Be sure to have something like that. Okay, and then the last thing is gap years. So a lot of people take gap years. Average age of getting into medical school is around 25. I took one gap year, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend it, because, hey, what I just said, that's a lot. And a lot of people can't squeeze all that time, all those intentional activities in 4 years. It's hard, especially if you don't know what you want to do, especially if you're not like, I want to be a doctor right from the get-go. So take advantage of your gap years. Use that time to boost your application. Look at your weak spots. Do you not have that leadership? Do you not have enough volunteer work? And make it better. Same with scores. I took my gap year to take my second MCAT, and I completely changed my study strategy, and it worked. So definitely take advantage of gap years. Focus on yourself. Take the time to relax, maybe travel. Med school is hard. Trust me, I'm doing it right now, and it is a marathon. It never stops. It is such a grind, but it's awesome. I love it. Wouldn't want to do anything else, but it is a lot. So giving yourself a break is definitely a good idea. Okay, and I think this is the last slide. I wanted to just touch on a little bit about what my life now in medical school is all about. And really, I want to give you some takeaways that you need to start thinking about, even in high school, if you're trying to succeed not only in medical school, but even in undergrad and in all things. And I'll get to that in just a second. So workload is a lot. A typical week for me is okay. So it's around 25 lectures a week, which is, if you could wrap your mind around that, that's a lot. They range from 30 minutes to an hour each. We have 4 hours of case-based learning a week. We have 4 hours of medical skills class. So medical skills is basically where they teach you how to use a stethoscope and all the medical tools. You do all the physical exams. Case-based learning is super cool. You work through a case with your classmates, and you're looking at labs, and you're trying to figure out the diagnosis. We have OPP class, like I was saying, where they're teaching you the manipulations with your hands. And then we have exams every single Monday, every 2 weeks. So I actually had an exam this morning, and I'm relaxing a little bit today, which is nice because I've been studying all weekend. But with that crazy schedule in mind, that's not to say that you can't have balance, that you can't have fun, that you can't have a life, because trust me, you can. What you have to do though is you have to time manage. You have to really get good at being intentional with your schedule, being intentional with your time, not wasting time, and planning out your week, planning out scheduling fun for yourself, scheduling workouts, scheduling just things that are going to make your soul happy, because that's what's going to help you get through medical school without burnout. And so time management is everything. Lean on your classmates. I couldn't tell you how many times I've like leaned on my class this year, just from the Anki decks that they've shared, all sorts of PowerPoints or study guides. I've utilized all of it, and it's amazing. Um, and like I said earlier, so I think the main takeaway that you should get out of this as a high schooler is really prioritize your time management skills, really prioritize trying to find balance amidst your crazy schedule. Because if you can develop those habits now where you're actively working out every week and you're actively eating a healthy diet, you're making sure to get enough sleep, those are the coping mechanisms that will help you get through medical school, where it's going to be so much more intense, so much more stressful. You need to have those healthy coping techniques to just step away, step back, and rejuvenate yourself, and also have the organization skills to really just plan out your entire week to make sure you get everything done, academically related and socially related. And if you can master those two skills, oh, you're going to be completely set in medical school, I promise. And I'm reaping the benefits now. I'm doing really well academically, and I have to say that I do have a very balanced lifestyle, and it's been amazing. So so with that note, you can do it. I know you can. I know it's a lot, but with creating a timeline for yourself, being intentional, finding your why, doing this for the right reasons, I know that you can do it. And I'm here to help with that journey in any way I can. And thank you. Here to answer any questions if anyone has any. Otherwise, it was amazing giving this talk.
Thank you so much. That was very informative and amazing presentation. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. While we're waiting for more questions, I do have a few.
Okay, let's do it.
First one is pretty generic, but when did you realize that medicine was the right path for you?
Yeah, so I think from a young age, like I said, I always kind of had this inkling towards medicine. And of course, my parents were kind of whispering in my ear, like, be a doctor, be a doctor. And it's a very classic case for a lot of pre-meds. But I think what really did it for me was an undergrad where I had to establish, okay, am I doing this for myself? Or am I doing this for my parents? Or because that's what they've been telling me my whole life? And that is really an important moment that you need to establish for yourself as to why you're doing it. So for me, I was going back and forth. I was like, oh, should I go to nursing school? Should I go to PA school? Should I become a doctor? Like, there are a lot of different fields in medicine that are amazing and have their own perks and have their own benefits. But I think for me, I ended up coming to my conclusion that I wanted to become a doctor. It was my second year of undergrad, after I've had a wide variety of leadership activities. I was really active in my free clinic that I was saying before. And with those two experiences combined, I realized that I wanted to take more of the leadership stance in the medical team. I really wanted to have more autonomy over my patients' health and wellness. And I knew that the only way I could do that is by becoming a doctor.
And did you, the free clinic opportunities, did you like partake in those in like high school or as an undergraduate student?
So I participated in them in undergrad. However, in high school, I did also volunteer at a hospital. And I know a lot of volunteer opportunities are available for high schoolers, but it's not all encompassing. You're there and you're like cleaning equipment. I know what it is. Like I did it for so many years. I did it for like 2 years in high school, where you're going, you're seeing patients, but you're like cleaning everything, and you're, bringing them food. So you're not really getting the real clinical experience that you're yearning for. So I would say reaching out to those free clinics can maybe be a better bet for you.
I'll definitely look into that because I also volunteered at a hospital, but all we did was stock pods next to
Yep.
the patient's rooms.
Yep, I know. That was me. I totally understand. But your time will come. It'll get easier in undergrad for sure to get involved in those more intimate patient experiences. But I think in high school you could still get involved in a free clinic and do more, maybe educate patients, maybe of that sort.
I know another thing that a lot of high school students are pretty anxious about is classes and like, do we need to be taking these like all these APs and everything? Like, I know that like you said, how AP credits aren't really, they don't really translate to medical school. So even if you take something like AP English or AP Chemistry, you're gonna have to take it again.
Oh yeah.
But you still think that it's worth it taking these classes in high school?
So it's worth it if you're trying to get into a competitive undergraduate institution. And and I think that there's definitely something to say with going to a very competitive undergraduate institution where it's a really incredible experience. And I think it's something that should be sought after because it really you're surrounded by these really inspiring individuals who are motivated, who are passionate, and they are going to get you to where you need to be. Also, when applying to medical school, if you're applying from these institutions that are highly ranked, I wouldn't say that it gives you an edge up, but I know from my counselor that I did talk to, she said that they do take into account like GPA in terms of it, your GPA being a little lower, they cut you a little slack. They also know that you went to a really competitive undergrad, so they recognize that as well, and it could help in your application for medical school. I'm not going to say that it helps a lot because I don't think it does, but I think the AP classes are more so for you getting into the undergraduate institution of your choice and of your liking. I wouldn't say it translates much to medical school. What does translate to medical school is going to be what you take in undergrad and how well you do in those classes.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I don't think we have any questions in the chat. And if I get any in our quiz, I'll send them directly to you.
Awesome.
Yeah, that concludes today's session. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Miss Abiezzi, for